weather en route is expected to be fine, and the weather at Paro at the moment is partially cloudy. The temperature is 17 degrees centigrade, which is equivalent to 63 degrees Fahrenheit. In the descent, there are a few clouds ahead, so it may be a little turbulent. We will be landing in about 10 minutes, and for information, the local time is exactly 7 minutes past 11. I hope you're all comfortable and you enjoyed the flight with us this morning. Thank you for flying True.
It's been described as one of the most amazing approaches to any airport in the world. A spectacular flight across the planet's highest mountain range, followed by a 10-minute tree-skimming descent down into this hidden valley. The approach is to a daytime airstrip that sits at an elevation of 2,200 meters. Often in winter and during the monsoon, this lone aircraft is delayed for days due to heavy weather or cloud cover. But what's down below in this valley is even more amazing. A nation virtually unknown to most, and a society almost unchanged for hundreds of years. Shielded from the outside world by a majestic mountain range, and held together by a faith that runs through the very core of society, the people who live below consider this the abode of the gods, and a place where connections with the divine are possible. Travelers who have been here speak of an amazing country that seems frozen in time, a place and a people so unique that it seems impossible they even exist. But whether it was divine intervention or just pure luck, the travelers looking through this window consider being part of this nation's first major Dxpedition as perhaps the most amazing thing of all. Hidden high up in the eastern Himalayas, landlocked between China and India, Bhutan is probably the closest thing our planet has to a living natural temple. Known to its citizens as Drukyul, or the land of the thunder dragon, Bhutan's self-imposed isolation and deep-rooted Buddhist way of life have made it the most historically preserved nation on Earth. And though rapid change is everywhere in today's world, Bhutan is the exception. A lone survivor on a fast-paced techno-globe with one foot firmly planted in the past and the other cautiously and gently testing the waters of the future. Bhutan is home to about 600,000 people and has no major cities, highways or large airports. In fact, the nation's only airport is located in the west, about 65 kilometers from the capital of Thimphu, which is where the A52A story begins. The first order of business for expedition leader Glenn Johnson, W0GJ, is to release his last 2 crates of cargo, which came in only on today's flight due to size restrictions on the national airline Druk Air. Without them, critical items would have been left behind in Thailand, and the operation a total failure. But even after all airport formalities are taken care of, it will still take another 2 hours of travelling by bus to reach the capital. And on Bhutan's winding mountain roads, this is a ride that is definitely not for the faint-hearted. The nation's capital of Thimphu sits in a picturesque valley at an elevation of about 2,300 metres. With a population of only 45,000, Thimphu is just a small town by most Asian standards, but proportionately about right for a mostly rural nation like Bhutan. Journey's End, however, is not in the city centre, but on the eastern hills at a very unique hotel, the one chosen to host the first major Dxpedition in the history of Bhutan, A52A.
This all started about 3 or 4 years ago. I'm an orthopedic surgeon, and in one of our magazines I read an article about Orthopedics Overseas, which is a volunteer organization for orthopedic surgeons to donate time to third world countries. And Bhutan stood out in big red letters at me, and I thought, wow, what a dream. If I could only get assigned to Bhutan, and maybe somehow I could get a ham license and operate. Well, I did get my name on the list, and my assignment is coming up in about 6 or 7 months to work at the hospital here in Thimphu. I'll be here for a month. And one thing led to another, and the Ministry of Communications was putting together a new plan or new law that would authorize amateur radio. And one of the chief engineers has been working on this project for many, many years. And finally, the end of March of this year, 2000, the Bhutan Telecommunications Act became law, authorizing amateur radio. And I talked to the chief engineer about licensing, and my plan was to bring my son and I over and do a short, simple operation. And I was asked to get together a group of people for a group operation.
3 members arrived a day earlier than the rest of this full team of 15. And with the help of the family and staff of the hotel, most antennas were pre-assembled on the ground and ready to raise in less than a day. But the fact that these antennas and the rest of the team's gear made it here at all is a wonder. Experienced Dxpeditioners know that the logistics of shipping tons of equipment for a large-scale operation can take up to a year of planning and careful preparation. But with only 2 weeks advance notice from the ministry and 2 size-restricted cargo flights per month serving the entire nation, A52A faced a serious problem: how to instantly airlift a mega expedition.
We thought the only way to get equipment and logistics into Bhutan was by DHL, and they accepted only small packages. And so our biggest problem was getting antennas and masts in, because the maximum size was about 1 meter. And we finally found a shipper for air freight at a less of a cost than DHL that could get things here. We had 1 cargo flight that this stuff had to catch in time for operation. If we missed the cargo flight, we wouldn't have our stuff to operate. We got word when I got to Bangkok that 17 of the 19 crates got on board. 2 of the crates didn't. Well, it took a few hours to figure out which 2 crates didn't. One of the crates had the 4 ICOM radios. The other crate had a bunch of our supplies in it that was critical, like power supplies and headsets and things like that. So I spent 4 days in Bangkok trying to go through customs to break down these crates so they'd fit into the Druk Air plane. It took a special permission to get into the custom house or to the warehouse where our stuff was. We finally found the 2 crates. And we found the airplane and the size of the doors, and with the help of 2 or 3 guys, we recrated everything into 2 boxes that would fit into the Druk Air plane. So we arrived with everything, nothing lost. And you know, with the fast logistics of this operation, it really is amazing that things just played out as well as they did.
Antenna assembly is tough up in the thin mountain air of Thimphu, but once it's all over, the reward for such a heavy day is spectacular.
One of the things that I took on was trying to rearrange the hotel to best optimize it for our operations. And I made a study of the floor, the various floors, what was available to us, and basically the whole hotel was ours. We could do whatever we needed. The owners said, whatever you want, just ask for it. So what we did was come up with a plan that made the top floor basically an operating area, and the floor below it was a sleeping area. The hotel staff literally rearranged their hotel so that this could happen. They moved beds, they moved furniture, they moved equipment. Everything was just made exclusively and for our use.
I think we've put together a very good team. We have a team of some of the best names that you can ever imagine on Dxpedition teams. Actually, it took 2 weeks after the word go to get together an expedition of 15 guys. And things unbelievably came together, and here we are.
This group that's here right now, the radio amateur group, so this is like really different from the others. They don't have time to eat, they don't have time for sightseeing, anything. They're all very busy with their work. Whereas the other tourists that we have, they come here and have their meals or maybe, come to sleep, but they go sightseeing and they go different places.
The Pinewood Hotel, base camp for A52A, looks and feels more like a home than your average hotel or resort. Managed by a young lady who goes by the name of Lenny, she, along with her parents, keep this family-style hotel running smoothly and according to the Tourism Authority of Bhutan's strict standards. Home to the best view in town and rated as one of the top hotels in the country, this is, of course, the first time Pinewood has hosted anything along the likes of ham radio operators, and certainly the first time the entire compound has been transformed into a 7-station transmitting site.
This place was actually to be my parents' home. It was built as a, house to live in. But then my father was hardly here. They kept going to places in Bhutan itself with his work and things like that. So, and then I thought maybe I could try, running it as a small hotel. So, and then we did a little bit of modifying here and there. Like the restaurant was supposed to be the, sort of family sitting room, And then that was right for the restaurant. Downstairs we made the reception, everything later on. And then well, now it's a proper hotel. We started around 95, and in between I had given it on lease to someone else, and now I've taken it back myself because it wasn't being managed properly. I've had all kinds of guests from everywhere of here. Everyone liked it, at least that's what they tell me. Everyone liked it. The view, we've got a very nice view from here, and it's like 24 hours duty for me. It's good for me. I mean, like, I like it. Somehow I like the work. I like my work, looking after all these guests here, and I enjoy it. And the group right now, the operators, ham radio operators that are here right now, I don't think they've gone anywhere. They've been here 24 hours with all their meals here itself. And I mean, it's different. They're all different from the other groups that we've had. I mean, it's something that's never, never happened here in Bhutan. And it's happening here in my hotel, and I like it.
Ending X-ray? The 6 Denmark X-ray 5 and 9. Whiskey Charlie 6 Denmark X-ray, thank you. Alpha 5 to Alpha. Sierra Kilowatt 5 and 9.
Sierra Kilowatt 0 Hotel Bravo. Sugar Kilowatt 0 Hotel Boston. You're also 5 and 9, thank you.
Sierra Kilowatt 0 Hotel Boston, thanks. Alpha 5 to Alpha.
Bravo Sugar Delta.
Bravo Sugar Delta 5 and 9.
Thank you very much. Signal Kilo America number 9, Bravo Sierra Delta 5988. You are
Kilo Alpha 9, Bravo Sierra Delta, thanks. Alpha 5 to Alpha. Again? Denmark United 5 and 9. Denmark United.
Sugar Mike 5 Bravo Denmark America.
Sugar Mike 5 Bravo Denmark United 5 and 9.
Sugar Mike 5 Bravo Delta America 59.
Roger, Sugar Mike 5 Bravo Delta America, thanks. Alpha 5 to Alpha.
Papa Mike.
Papa Mike 5 and 9.
Thank you, Lima Yankee 1 Papa Mike 5 and 9.
Lima Yankee 1 Papa Mike, thanks. Alpha 5 to Alpha 300 315. America 3 Delta Zulu 5 and 9. Roger, America 3 America Zulu, thanks. Alpha 5 to Alpha. Again?
W0 North America. W0
Whiskey 0 North America 5 and 9.
Thank you. 5-9 from W0 North America.
Thanks, Alpha 5 to Alpha. Kilo 9 Alpha Lima Papa 5 and 9. Kilo 9 Alpha Lima Papa 5 and 9.
Roger.
73 is Alpha 5 to Alpha 300 310.
Sugar Mike 0 Whiskey Kilo Alpha. Sugar Mike 0 Whiskey Kilo Alpha.
Sugar Mike 0 Whiskey Kilo Alpha 5 and 9.
Thank you. Also 5 and 9. 73.
73 is Alpha 5 to Alpha.
November 2 Juliet Tango.
November 2 Juliet Tango 5 and 9.
November 2 Juliet Tango 5-9. Thank you.
You're welcome, Alpha 5 to Alpha.
Golf 4 Zulu Big Fat Juliet.
Golf 4 Zulu America Juliet 5 and 9.
Golf 4 Zulu Juliet.
Roger, Golf 4 Zulu Victor Juliet, thanks. Alpha 5 to Alpha.
X-ray Delta. Kilowatt 9 X-ray Delta.
Kilowatt 9 X-ray Delta 5 and 9.
Roger. Thank you. Kilowatt 9 X-ray Delta 59. Thank you.
Thanks, Alpha 5 to Alpha. Again?
7 Quebec Hotel Echo.
7 Quebec Hotel Echo 5 and 9.
Hotel also 5 and 9. Whiskey 7 Quebec Hotel Echo.
Whiskey 7 Quebec Hotel Echo, thanks. Alpha 5 to Alpha. Lima Bravo 5 and 9. Whiskey 4 Echo Lima Bravo 5 and 9. Thanks, Alpha 5 to Alpha 300 305. Radio Uniform 5 and 9. Victor Echo 3 Papa Romeo Uniform 5 and 9.
Well, it's really a lifelong ambition to be here ever since I first heard about Bhutan from Gus Browning back in the late 50s. I read some of his stories, I saw some of the pictures, and ever since then I've wanted to go to Bhutan. I had an occasion to visit with Gus once. He showed me some of his pictures, told some stories, and that even heightened that desire back in 1987 at the convention in Atlanta. So I'm here now, and what's amazing to me is today we visited the Minister of Communication, and I brought up well, he had mentioned that we all had individual call signs, and I mentioned that I had A52 Gus Browning, GB, and just kind of a commemoration of what he meant to me as a youngster. And they remembered Gus and what he had done here in the country, and he was a friend of one of the ministers back then, and it was interesting to know that he still has a presence here even now, 40 years later.
A large-scale Dxpedition is certainly a new sight for Bhutan, and a visit from the Ministry of Communications was of course expected and welcome, especially since it was their invitation and new license plan that made A52A possible. Bhutan's new official amateur radio licensing structure is the result of a decade of hard work by hams such as Zoro Miyazawa JH1HAT and Jim Smith VK9NS, who spent many years shuttling back and forth for demonstrations and proposals. Today, the product of their efforts is a set of clear, unambiguous license regulations for both citizens and foreigners alike. But rather than letting in a select few at the start of this new legislation, the ministry opened the door to all from day one. Amateur radio has now taken a great leap forward in Bhutan, from one of the most inaccessible to probably the most clear, open and friendly license program in Asia. Thimphu's only market opens its gates exclusively on weekends and is essentially the only place where fresh produce and crafts are traded on a regular basis. Bhutan's small population is about 85% rural, most of these being subsistence farmers, so markets like this have limited appeal to the majority. Being so rural and isolated in Asia, Bhutan's economy is of course small, but growing. One of the biggest exports today is hydroelectric power to India, which in mountainous Bhutan is an almost inexhaustible source of revenue. As with any developing country, foreign aid also makes up a substantial chunk of Bhutan's income, with India being one of the largest contributors. The extremely close relationship India keeps with Bhutan permeates throughout most of Bhutan's national development. Even the national currency is pegged with the Indian rupee. Ethnically, Bhutanese are descendants from 3 regional Himalayan peoples that began from a distinct culture away from Tibet about 400 years ago. The most recent ethnic addition to the mix are Nepalese, who settled in the south in the early 19th century. Though numerous invasions and civil wars took place over the years, Bhutan has been unified as a single people since 1907, when the nation's first king came to power. Bhutan's current king only came to the throne as a teenager in 1972 and is responsible for much of the current idea to gradually bring Bhutan into the 21st century with new technology. As the true leader of Bhutan, this humble young monarch commands genuine admiration and respect among Bhutanese. And it is rare to find a home that does not proudly hang his photograph. Bhutan's population growth is estimated at 3.1%, one of the world's highest, due in part to the substantial improvement in medical care over the last 15 years. Such numbers are warning signs of problems to come, and steps are being introduced to prevent a dangerous strain on national resources. But on a comparative scale to its massively overpopulated neighbours, India and China, Bhutan is in an enviable position of having most of its national forests and land untouched and preserved, something very few nations can brag about. A52A came to Bhutan prepared, with 7 IC756 Pros sponsored by ICOM and an array of antennas for 6 through 160. Despite the power restriction of 100 watts, band conditions in May, especially to North America, are outstanding, and the limitation is barely even felt on the high bands. Despite the voices of disapproval from the DX community over a 100-watt limit on a major Dxpedition, the low power actually became an advantage, with minimal interstation interference and manageable pile-ups.
QRZ, Delta Lima 1, November, America, Italy. Thank you, QRZ.
Germany, Canada, Gulf Canada.
Gulf Canada, 59. England, United 1, Gulf Canada. Thank you, QRZ, listening 150.
November 9, November Sierra.
Again, please.
November 9, November Sierra.
Something November Sierra, 59.
November 9, November Sierra. 5, November.
The A52A routine followed a similar operating pattern to many other major Dxpeditions since VK0IR in 1997, with 3-hour shifts per rig, CT-generated log uploads to the web and the pilot system. A local email address and telephone connection, of course, helped the situation a great deal.
Yeah, Gulf 4, Papa Tango, Japan. You're 5-9, over.
The Pinewood Hotel sits on a mountainside facing the Thimphu Valley to the west, with a clear, unobstructed path from 190 degrees through 10 degrees. This places Europe and most of North America in an excellent short path direction, which in May is just about perfect. Hotels on the western side of the city, the only other option in Thimphu, would have provided nicer paths to Japan, but Europe and the eastern United States would have been severely blocked. Considering the relative distance trade-off, the Pinewood proved to be the best choice, and final QSO statistics, especially from stateside, proved the point. The high-band antenna farm consisted of an array of Cushcraft Yagis, including 4 A3S tri-banders and 2 A3WS walk-banders, with lightweight and easily transportable Force 12 masts providing the support. Though a challenge at 100 watts, the low-band setup consisted of single-band verticals for 30 and 40 metres, a K9 AY Special for 80 metres, and a Titan X vertical for 160. Line noise was an intermittent but serious problem on all bands, and though the actual source was impossible to trace, it was determined to be radiating from the power lines directly in front of the hotel. This was not entirely unexpected, especially due to the type of power grids found in South Asia. But everything isn't always perfect on a Dxpedition, and the team learned to deal with the annoyance using a combination of adjusted beam headings and noise blankers. The main areas that suffered at A52A due to the mountains were Oceania Short Path and Stateside Long Path. Both areas were worked without much problem via the North Pole, though the number of complaints through the internet was higher than expected. Often, DXs at home fail to realize how many restrictions a Dxpedition faces in terms of season, equipment, power and location. A52A did not have the luxury of kilowatts, 360 degrees of clear view or midwinter low-band conditions, and had to make do with what was given. But in a peculiar way, this antenna farm is not such a strange sight in Bhutan, as another type of transmitting antenna also graces these hillsides. Bright, multicoloured prayer flags can be found just about everywhere in Bhutan, including mountainsides, fields, rooftops, monasteries, and even amongst the A52A antennas. Made out of cloth, printed with text and mounted on long wooden poles, the flags come in 4 varieties and 5 colours, each symbolising the basic elements of earth, iron, water, wood and fire. They also symbolize the 5 meditation Buddhas, the 5 wisdoms, the 5 directions, and the 5 emotional states. Though this symbolism may seem complicated to an outsider, their function is very straightforward. They are simply antennas to the gods, transmitters of prayer to the heavens. Another portal of Buddhist prayer in Bhutan is a chorten, literally a small building or stupa containing offerings or relics. Built in many different Himalayan styles, Indian, Nepali, Bhutanese or Tibetan, the chorten is said to ward off evil and protect people from danger. Chortens are found all over Bhutan and are a popular place to offer daily prayers for many of the kingdom's ordinary citizens. Prayer wheels are another common transmitter of prayer in the Buddhist world and vary in size from small handheld versions to massive cylinders such as these located at the Memorial Chorten in Thimphu. Prayers are written on the drums and are spoken or said each time the wheel makes a rotation. With Bhutan situated at the crossroads of the Buddhist world between India and East Asia, it's not surprising that monasteries are everywhere, many of them in continuous use for over 1,000 years. Bhutan's monks are highly respected members of the communities they serve, and the head of the country's monk body is so revered he commands equal respect to the king. Monks as young as 10 come to study at monasteries like this, a gesture which is considered a great honor to any family that sends one of its sons into the order. Just as the churches of Europe were in the Middle Ages, monasteries and religious schools in Bhutan and Tibet were, up until very recently, the source of all education, knowledge and power. Buddhism and the nation are intertwined in Bhutan, with faith being the foundation of all society and life. Even the history of Bhutan closely follows the path and development of Himalayan Buddhism over the last 1,000 years. And it is almost impossible to understand this region's complex history without knowledge of the spread of Buddhism across the Himalayas and into East Asia. Bhutan's own Drukpa Kagyu school of Buddhism is very closely related to the Tibetan form, but has evolved its own distinct set of moral codes, practices and beliefs. Because of this close relationship, pilgrims regularly cross over from neighbouring Tibet, Ladakh and Sikkim for extended stays at various monasteries throughout Bhutan. But their travel is largely dependent on border tensions with China and India at the time. Due to their religious connection to Tibet and the exiled Dalai Lama, the northern frontier with China is officially closed. But local crossings do occur on an unrecorded basis, especially for families with relatives on both sides. With Tibet under Chinese rule, Bhutan is now the only nation in the world to retain this form of Himalayan Buddhism as its official state religion.
Ending in Papa.
November 6, Bravo Echo Papa.
November 6 Bravo Echo Papa, 5 and 9. Thanks, Alpha 52 Alpha, North and South America only, 300 305. Yankee Radio Alpha, 5 and 9. QSL K6YRA Alpha 52 Alpha. Ending in Hotel. A Kilo 6 again, ending Hotel. Kilo 6 Charlie Hotel, 5 and 9. Kilo 6 Charlie Hotel, 5 and 9. Thank you. Alpha 52 Alpha, 300 305, North and South America. Ending in Japan, 5 and 9.
Whiskey America 5, Tango Yankee Japan 59 seconds.
Okay, is it Tango Echo Japan?
Whiskey Alpha 5, Tango Yankee Tokyo Yokohama Japan 59.
WA5TYJ, thank you. Alpha 52 Alpha, 300 305. All of the logistics involved. Within 2 weeks, we had all of our equipment shipped by air freight to Bhutan, and it was almost literally sleepless nights because most of us had full-time jobs, and trying to get all the paperwork done and the running around to get everything together was just an incredible full-time job in itself in 2 weeks for an expedition like this. Again, Foxtrot. Ending in Foxtrot. KI7WF 5 and 9. Is it Kilowatt Italy 7 Whiskey Fox? Okay, what's the number? KI6WF, I got it, thanks. Alpha 52 Alpha. Kilowatt America 5 and 9. A Kilowatt Alpha again. A Kilowatt Alpha again. That was at Kilowatt 6 Alpha November Papa 5 and 9. Thank you. Alpha 52 Alpha, 300 305, North and South America. Hotel Whiskey again. Kilo 7 Hotel Germany, 5 and 9. Thanks, Alpha 52 Alpha. Charlie Golf, 5 and 9.
Yeah, real fine. This is Kilowatt 5 Charlie Golf. You're 5'9" in the state of Oklahoma. The name's Chuck. Charlie Henry, Charlie Kilowatt.
QSL Chuck, K5CG from Alpha 52 Alpha. QRZ 300 305. When we got off the plane in Peril and got in the little bus to bring us here, I had a lump in my throat because it was a dream come true, because I've been planning on coming to Bhutan for 3 years or so. And finally, we're here in literally the Shangri-La of the Himalayas. What a beautiful country. I mean, just unbelievable beauty all around us. And the books are right. The books say you can't take a bad picture of Bhutan.
And certainly parts of the capital, Thimphu, easily fit that description. The seat of Bhutan's government, for instance, is in this magnificent building called a dzong. This type of structure, whose name derives from the Tibetan word for fortress, is normally used for regional or national administration and is one of the most exotic features of the country. Given that religion and government work so closely together, buildings such as this one in the capital have one wing built as a monastery and another for the National Assembly and offices of the king. Full formal national dress is, of course, mandatory for everyone who enters buildings such as these. Downtown Thimphu is not exactly the most bustling of cities, and even up until the late 70s was still considered quite rural. With no airport or large highway serving as a link, Thimphu is still the most isolated capital city in the world. Things actually get a little tense at times during the midsummer rainy season when the only road leading southward out of town is frequently cut off due to mudslides. When that happens, many supplies run low as Thimphu is severed completely from the nation's only airport in Paro and the main supply route overland from India. Motorable roads were constructed only in the 1960s, but even today there still aren't many driving options, and the number of paved roads in Bhutan can be counted on two hands. The first cars only drove into Thimphu in 1962. Since then, there has never been much of a traffic problem downtown, and Thimphu is still the world's only capital city without a single traffic light.
And 80, it disables it. So for 60 and 80...
Confusion seems to reign as the famous Titan X low-band vertical is opened for the first time.
40, it uses the capacitors.
So this relay
160.
This relay generally switches on.
Though it's been a while for the team's veteran users of this antenna, the assembly procedure needs to be thought through very carefully. An antenna of this height and flexibility needs just the right touch to avoid disaster, especially when being assembled on a windy mountaintop.
We're going to raise it a section at a time, up like this, but we're not going to go vertical. Meanwhile, the rest of the antenna is going to be laid on the ground. Okay. So for step one, we've got to have somebody on each of the four guys at the bottom, but you can't tie them yet because we're not vertical, we're still here. Then we go up a little bit further. People have a hold of the second set of guys.
Pull it.
And pull it, you will need that. And then when it gets, the bottom is vertical, we're going to tie it off. Okay? This may still be on the ground. Don't worry about it. Then when the bottom is tied up, we'll go a step further. We'll have people on the top set of guys and the people that have the second set, when we go vertical, tie them off. Okay? And then we'll put the last part up, tie it off. That's the plan. I have no idea what's going to really happen.
If anything at all is going to emerge from an effort on 80 or 160, it's going to take an excellent antenna such as this and lots of patience. Mounted far away from the hotel on an even higher hilltop, the antenna should at the very least be able to net something out of Europe or nearby Asian countries. To a first-time user, the Titan X seems an almost impossibly wobbly antenna to deal with. But if each section of guys is carefully tied off in stages, this wet noodle will eventually stand tall, albeit a little crooked. Halfway through the Dxpedition, a very special visitor dropped by the Pinewood. Yontan, A51TY, is one of only two remaining radio amateurs originally licensed in Bhutan from the 1970s. While Yontan was shown the workings of a major multi-station Dxpedition and all the logging and logistical details that go along with it, he also took the time to explain his past experiences as a ham radio operator in such a rare DXCC country. As a token of respect and appreciation for his efforts over so many years, a gift sent along from low-band enthusiast Ron, K6UR, was presented. The MFJ noise canceller will hopefully make the low bands more accessible and enjoyable at Yontan's home QTH in Thimphu, where line noise can sometimes be a problem.
Alpha 52 Alpha 305. November 8 Kilo November 5 and 9. QSL the 5 and 7. Thank you. Alpha 52 Alpha.
Yankee Fox.
A K8 Yankee Foxtrot 5 and 9.
5-9 West Virginia 73.
Yeah, it's Whiskey 8, right?
W8 Whiskers 8. That's right.
Okay, Whiskey 8 Yankee Fox. Thank you. Alpha 52 Alpha.
November 4 November Alpha.
Who's in November 4? November 4?
Yeah, November 4 November Alpha.
Okay, guys, hang on. November 4 November again.
Nancy 4 November Alpha, North America, over.
Nancy 4 North America 5 and 9.
Yeah, thank you, 5-9, over.
Okay, good signal. Alpha 52 Alpha 305 310. Whiskey 1 Echo 5 and 9.
Yeah, Whiskey 1 Echo. Washington 1 Echo. 59, 5 and 9, over.
QSL the 5 and 9. Whiskey 1 Echo. Thank you. Alpha 52 Alpha 305.
Whiskey Alpha 2 Lima Echo. QSL, thank you very much.
Okay, Whiskey Alpha 2 Lima Echo Tango 5 and 9.
Roger, you're also 5 and 9 in New Jersey near Philadelphia. Thank you.
You're welcome. Alpha 52 Alpha 305.
November 1 India Uniform November.
November 1 Italy Uniform November. Doug, you're 5 and 9. Over.
Very good, Don. Very good. You're 5 and 9 also. 5 and 9. Big signal into Massachusetts.
Okay, thanks, Doug. And thanks for all the work as a pilot. QRZ 305 Alpha 52 Alpha.
Again, please. Oscar Victor Germany どうぞ。はい、Japan Echo 2ありがとうございました。QRZ。オスカー something どうぞ。ジャパンフロリダ2キロワットオスカー59ですどうぞ。はい、キロワットオスカーザンジバーラストレーダー Z ゼブラ59ですどうぞ。はい、ザンジバーありがとうございました。キローゼ。シュガージャーマニーホテル59どうぞ。はい、ジュリエットアルファ2 JA2 です。同じく59どうぞ。はい、ありがとうございました。ジャパンアルファ2キローゼ。フォックスシュガーマイク59どうぞ。はい、JA2 ですね。ありがとうございました。キローゼ。キロベクターアメリカ59どうぞ。ジャパンホテル4ありがとうございました。QRZ。ごめんなさい。ジャパンホテル4ハワイベクターアメリカですね。59です。ありがとうございました。はい、ありがとう。QRZ。JA7 エコユニフォームロミオ59どうぞ。はい、同じく59です。ありがとうございました。はい、ありがとうございました。QRZ。something Romeo どうぞ。いや、ジャパンアメリカ7ベイカーメキシコロミオ59ありがとうございました。アメリカロンドン59どうぞ。はい、J1 アメリカロンドンユニフォーム59ありがとうございました。どうもこんにちは。J1UQP59 です。はい、どうもおおきに。QRZ。ユナイテッドジャーマニーザンジバー59どうぞ。ジャパンアメリカ3 JA3UG です。オースト59です。ありがとうございます。はい、JA3 了解しました。QRZ。リーマンユニフォームラディオ59どうぞ。ジャパンゴルフ2です。ジャパンゴルフ2リーマンユニフォームラディオです。59です。どうぞ。はい、ジャパンジャーマニー2リーマンユニフォームラディオありがとうございました。QRZ。
From small school children all the way to top officials, Bhutanese are required to wear their national dress at the workplace, school, and most everywhere else outside of home. The national dress code is one of the more unique and visible aspects of the culture and makes them a rather formally dressed people compared to their counterparts in the West. Made out of locally designed and manufactured materials, the heavy garment is used in both summer and winter and is basically just a type of thick robe. Men wear a hoisted version called a go with a tight sash around the waist, and women a similar but longer version called a kira. People of official stature such as ministers, community leaders and those entering a dzong are also required to wear a long body scarf, the colour of which usually determines their rank in society. And as a gesture of respect to their hosts, but also out of curiosity, the full A52A team photograph is taken wearing the national dress.
Well, I'm ready to go.
You are in a go.
I'm wearing to go. Isn't that what I said? I'm raring.
Raring to go.
Raring to go. Hey, this is kind of the culmination of it all. I mean, we have been, if you stop and analyze it, what we've been doing is bringing some culture of the outside world, amateur radio and the internet and those kinds of things to the people of Bhutan, and now they're repaying us and bringing us some of their culture, and I think it's a great swap. I plan to take this home with me and wear it proudly on certain occasions.
You know, it's been 40 years since I first heard about Bhutan, and it was Gus Browning that had written some stories back to the States and pictures, and I'd always wanted to come here, and now I'm here with a great team of guys, and it's been not only a lifelong, dream of mine, but it's hard to believe that we really are here in this beautiful valley and making radio contacts at the same time.
It's been excellent. The conditions have not been the best ones, but we have had some very good openings to Europe, USA, Japan. Well, Japan is very difficult. We have done it on the most bands so far. We are doing it over. We'll take the virginity of 160 meters tonight, and we are doing great.
Looks like this is first time we work more Europe than States. Sorry, guys.
I was still asleep, and I still feel sleepy. And I got to work on those logs. And then I got to go to the Morse code. There's no time for sleeping, man. That's why I look like I look.
This is, I keep saying this every time. It seems that I'm fortunate enough to be associated with an even better bunch of guys and, a better group of operators each time. And I've got to say it again. I don't think there's been a better group of operators ever assembled for an expedition, particularly an expedition to such a highly needed country. Every one of the fellows is a good operator in their own right, and 5 or 6 of them are just, superb.
I always chased the bands trying to work Alpha 51 Papa November. It was one of the few countries that was always elusive. It's been elusive for most hams their whole lives, and here I am, while needing it, being able to put it on the air for all those people that need the number 2 country. And I've been to many Dxpeditions, but never anything this rare. And it's, in a way, it's moving being in a country this beautiful and preserved in a way of life that we just don't know in America. And then bringing ham radio, a hobby, into a place like this on such a grand scale with such good operators. It's going to be something I'll probably remember the rest of my life.
Look over here, Bhutan, downtown Thimphu, Bhutan. Look at that view and the mountains. You can see the Himalayas and the snow in the background. We're really here doing A52A. Isn't that neat?
I've never operated with a better group of people than here. Everybody's accommodating, everybody's friendly, everybody's willing to go the extra mile for the other guy. The country's absolutely awesome. of all the places I've been in the world, this is a unique place. I've never been any place quite like this, including some areas in this general vicinity, like Nepal. The people are incredible. I can't say enough about the hospitality we've had since we've been here. The organization has been superb. I wouldn't trade this experience for the world.
These are our hosts.
Okay.
Yay!
Just half press, it will auto-call.
Alpha.
No.